I love her for 6 years, but she kissed her ex-boyfriend in front of me. But I took the lead in clapping and yelled, "One more." Everyone was stunned, the air frozen in an instant. She suddenly looked at me, her face pale, confused, and angry. Zhao Yuanji, our 6-year lover, she hadn't expected me to react like this. She frantically tried to explain, but I just sneered. Zhao Yuanji's provocative gaze fell on me, but I felt unusually calm. I stared at them, a hint of sarcasm on my lips. "The atmosphere is good. Do you want to get a room to continue?" The whole audience exploded, and everyone looked at me as if I were laughing at a joke. She was furious and accused me of being overly sensitive, saying she and her ex-boyfriend were just friends. She publicly berated me and urged me to be more tolerant. But the guilt in her eyes didn't fool me. Zhao Yuanji sneered and agreed, saying, "I'm not stingy." At that moment, I felt like the butt of ridicule. The gazes of the entire audience stabbed me like knives. In the past, I would have exploded and questioned her betrayal. But today, I just watched the show with cold eye. She was used to my angry bowing, but she didn't expect that this time I didn't want to argue at all. Over the past 6 years, I've experienced countless arguments between her and her ex-boyfriend. At the worst, I overturned the coffee table, sending fruit tumbling to the floor. Her cold expression was more deadly than any other injury. The Cold War, after the argument, always ended with me giving in. I gave in again and again, simply because I loved too humbly. But in return, all I got was her indifference and habitual neglect. She was so beautiful, a former school beauty, and had no shortage of suitors. But I was just an ordinary person, desperately guarding her like a treasure, only to feel increasingly guilty. I tried to share the little bits of my life with her, a cat, an ice cream, a piece of strange fruit. But all I got in response was a cold response. Boring. I was passionate as fire, and she was cold as ice. I thought that by being humble, I could earn a little sympathy. But the truth told me that was just self-deception. The looks from her classmates finally made her realize she had gone too far. She cautiously called my name, as if to save face. But I just said, so indifferent that even I was surprised. I looked at her, the woman I had tried so hard to protect, and she was so unfamiliar that I wanted to laugh. She was anxious and whispered, "I'll explain it when we get home." In her eyes, this matter was insignificant. But in my heart, that string had already been completely broken. I can hardly use this as an excuse to be angry, but the feeling of suffocation in my heart is stronger than ever before. I just waved my hands, pretended nothing happened, and said it was okay. I was used to this kind of humiliation anyway. Huang Mingyao didn't take me seriously at all. She turned her head and kept chatting with Zhao Yuanji with a smile on her face. Their eyes met, and their laughter kept ringing in my ears, as if they were the only two people left in the world. In front of me, she drank a cup of wine with him without any hesitation. The action was so ambiguous that it was dazzling. The people around me stared at me with all kinds of looks, including contempt, sympathy, and even a hint of gloating. I suddenly realized that Huang Mingyao hadn't shown me such a bright smile for a long time. All she left me was indifference and perfunctory attitude, but she gave all her tenderness to that so-called old love. I wouldn't be surprised if they really got a room tonight. After all, they have already crossed the line. They always do things beyond friendship in the name of friendship, testing how much I can endure again and again. Until tonight, when the alcohol and the atmosphere fueled the situation, she finally kissed someone else right under my nose. At that moment, I suddenly became very calm, smiled, and said, "Let them continue playing. I'm leaving first." I grabbed a cigarette, pushed open the door, and my back was as cold as a stranger, letting them whisper behind me. I can clearly hear some girls saying that I can't take a joke, that I'm too petty and too cowardly. But I don't care anymore. I'm too lazy to respond to these ridicules or explain anything. I have always been a kind person and never lose my temper easily, as if anyone could be my brother. But the fact is that the more tolerant I am, the more others think I am easy to bully and that I deserve it. In the past, whenever Zhao Yuanji was present, I would stay close to Huang Mingyao, fearing that something might happen. But tonight, a sentence suddenly flashed through my mind. If the ex cries, the current one will lose. After leaving the restaurant, I stood at the door and lit a cigarette. The smoke rushed into my lungs, and the pain made me feel comfortable. I suddenly realized that I was tired. I had stopped loving her a long time ago, but I just didn't dare to admit it. I returned to the house we rented together, which had 3 bedrooms and a living room and cost more than 4,000 yuan a month. Over the years, I have regarded it as my home and a safe haven for the two of us. But tonight, this home looks as cold as an empty shell to me. I was lying on the sofa watching short videos and fell asleep in a daze. Late at night, she finally came back. Familiar footsteps were heard at the door, smelling of alcohol and drunkenness. I didn't need to open my eyes to know that she was drunk and unconscious as usual. Every time in the past, she enjoyed my meticulous care. The fruits were cut, the hangover tea was kept hot, and the foot bath water was reheated over and over again, just to make her satisfied. But tonight, none of that happened. I even pretended to be fast asleep and refused to reply to her even a single word. She called me again, and she sensitively noticed that I was different from usual. In the restaurant, her eyes told me that she was ready to deal with my questions. But this time, she guessed wrong. I didn't make a fuss or ask any questions. I just walked away calmly. A few minutes later, she took off her high heels and fell asleep on another sofa in silence. She would rather lie down than wait for everything I prepared for her. The next morning, when she woke up, I was already sitting on the sofa, preparing materials for today's meeting. I still didn't prepare breakfast for her, not the half-boiled poached egg she was used to. No milk, no care. All she got was my indifference and silence. She spoke tentatively, saying that she had drunk too much last night, and Zhao Yuanji had sent her back. She added with a smile that it was a good thing she wasn't caught driving under the influence on the road, otherwise she might not be able to see me until the end of the year. Huang Mengyao was telling her embarrassing jokes in the living room, and her words seemed to be blaming me for leaving her alone last night, filling the air with blame. She wasn't concerned about me, nor did she care about the details. She was complaining that I no longer treated her like a princess like before, and not even a word of gentleness. I stood up and tied my tie neatly and quickly, my movements so familiar that they seemed like a machine. At that moment, I suddenly remembered that she had helped me tie my tie several times 7 years ago, and since then I've been fiddling with the tie by myself. Such small gestures never struck me as pretentious, but the time she tied my tie, I had once thought she truly cared about me, an idea now faded like an old photograph. She said that Zhao Yuanji had a broken heart last night, and that he felt he had few friends in this city, and that she was the only one who could accompany him for dinner and drinks. She said this without any shyness, but she was provoking some boundaries. Huang Mingyao rubbed her forehead and said she had a bad hangover. I nodded and said, "Come back early," then opened the door and walked out without even looking back at her. She screamed from the sofa, "You won't stop me?" There was anger and surprise in her voice. I turned around and saw her standing there, her face stunned, as if she didn't understand why I let go. I was working overtime at the company that night, and she sent me a photo at exactly 6 o'clock. She and Zhao Yuanji were sitting at the same dining table, and the two people in the picture were talking and laughing without any scruples. In the past, I would have pressed her until she was exhausted and forced her to confess all the details. But this time the photo was like a window, blowing a cool breeze that made me unusually calm and stopped breaking down. During that time, I even suffered from anxiety and relied on sleeping pills to fall asleep at night. When I heard Zhao Yuanji's name, my heart would tighten and my palms would sweat. But now I find that I have changed. I'm no longer as drained as before. I replied to her, "Okay, I'll work overtime first," and then put the phone back in the drawer. The screen went dark, just like my patience was turned off. In the photo, Zhao Yuanji looked haggard, like a rag doll that had just been hollowed out. I looked at that face for a very short time, and then buried myself in my work, using busyness to cover up the indifference in my heart. I was surprised to find that I didn't care about her daily life. I no longer cared about whether she had eaten, slept, what was in the refrigerator, or what to prepare for dinner. All these little things that used to make me nervous disappeared. In the past, I would spend the whole day on these trivialities, like a person bound by details. Now I suddenly wake up and realize that those daily routines are just my one-sided efforts and self-consumption. She didn't come home that night, and I didn't bombard her phone with calls, ask her best friends, or call the police in the middle of the night like I used to do. In the past, I would have become neurotic if she didn't come home all night, but now I just continue working. I remember one time she didn't come home all night, and I was like an ant on the hot pan. I finally called the police, and they found her at her best friend's house. After she came back, we had a big fight, and in a fit of rage, I overturned the coffee table that she forced me to buy for more than 8,000 yuan. The Cold War lasted for half a month. I took the initiative to apologize to her, but she looked at me with a cold look and asked bluntly and pointedly, "You overturned the coffee table. Are you going to hit me with your fists next time?" I knelt on the cold floor, slapping myself in the face one after another. I swore that I loved her death, and would go crazy without her. I even shouted that I could jump off the building for her and would never touch her even if I died. At that moment, I looked horrible even to myself, as crazy as a patient out of control. She finally broke down and confessed to me that she had wanted to leave me for a long time. She said that my love for her was abnormal and she was afraid that one day I would kill her. I laughed, a bitter laugh that tore at my heart. Yeah, between adults, who would still play that kind of game where they'd risk their lives? Then I realized I was the foolish one. That night, she didn't come home. I didn't call again, didn't report it to the police, and didn't raise any suspicions like I had in the past. I just showered, checked my phone, and went to sleep. I've never felt a sense of stability or peace before. No nightmares, no wild thoughts. Even my desire for women has been completely drained away. I've finally realized how exhausting my life has been. The next morning at 8 o'clock, we met at the gate of the residential complex. She took the initiative to speak, saying that she and Zhao Yuanji had drunk too much the previous night and had slept at her best friend Wang Xiong's house. Her explanation was so natural. I just nodded and said, "Oh, I see." Then there was a dead silence for 3 or 4 minutes, like two strangers. At that moment, I realized that we had run out of things to say to each other. But just as I left the complex, my phone vibrated. Zhao Yuanji had sent me a photo. In it, Huang Mingyao was lying in bed, and the angle of the shot was clear. She and Zhao Yuanji slept together. My heart didn't explode immediately. Instead, it was completely still, like a pool of stagnant water, without a single ripple. I turned off my phone, waited for the bus as usual, went to work as usual, and took a nap as usual. What really surprised me was that half an hour later, she chased me to the office. Her face was flustered, her eyes evasive, filled with guilt and fear. Apparently, Zhao Yuanji not only sent the photos to me, but also told her immediately. I know this person too well. He is trying to sow discord between us, to separate Huang Mingyao and me. He has been as treacherous as a snake since his student days. "Su Yuan, come out for a moment," she whispered to me. At that moment, there was a pleading look in her eyes that I had never seen before. I stood up calmly and walked with her into the company's fire escape, standing at the dimly lit stairwell. The air was as heavy as lead. She spoke first, her voice trembling, saying she had drunk too much and that Zhao Yuanji had insisted on taking her home. But he took her to his residence halfway, and she said they had no relationship and pushed him away. I sneered and asked, "So you stayed at his house all night?" She hurriedly shook her head and said, "I didn't sleep. I really didn't sleep." I stared at her, the corners of my mouth twitching slightly. "I know, of course you didn't sleep." She was so anxious that she almost cried, explaining that she sat on the sofa with her eyes open all night without touching him. "You stared at her coldly. What does it have to do with me? Didn't you say you were staying over at her bestie's house? What about you in the photo?" I reminded her that she had initially thought I was childish and suspicious, saying I wouldn't give her freedom. But now, I've given up on everything. Shouldn't she be happy? She's free now. No one can restrain her. Huang Mingyao was stunned, then furious. She thought explaining herself would be a way out, but when I didn't agree, she immediately resorted to her old tricks. In the past, no matter who was right or wrong, whenever she got angry, I was always the one to comfort her. She said coldly, "Su Yuan, stop being childish. I no longer have any feelings for Zhao Yuanji. We are just ordinary friends, as ordinary as can be." I couldn't bear it any longer and waved my hand to interrupt her. "Mingyao, I have to work overtime tonight. There's nothing to explain. I'm not angry, and I didn't say I didn't believe you, right? I have to go to work." I turned and left, leaving her standing alone in the hallway. I returned to my workstation, lowering my head to sort through meeting materials. My colleagues whispered, "Lao Su, you're too tired. This woman isn't right for you. The more beautiful a woman is, the more flies will be around her. You can't keep her away." He said bluntly, "Are you rich? Are you good looking? Haven't you read the news? Even a national husband has become a bootlicker, let alone you." In the past, I would have argued back, gotten red in the face, and even mentally resented him for meddling. But this time, I stayed silent, just smiled. At that moment, I realized that for some men, growth only takes a moment. That evening, Huang Mingyao's calls continued. I finally picked up. She choked up on the phone, saying she was at the company entrance and would pick me up for dinner. She also apologized, saying that even if there was nothing between her and Zhao Yuanji, she shouldn't have lied to me. I just replied calmly, "It's okay. I'm really not angry. I still have to work overtime. You can go back first. Go to sleep if you are tired. No need to wait for me." The call was hung up. She was angry. Half an hour later, she updated her WeChat moments with a photo. In it, she and Zhao Yuanji sat at a dining table. The camera focused on her, and on the table sat a plate of bamboo shrimp. A hand reached out, attentively offering the peeled shrimp. I recognized it immediately. It was Zhao Yuanji's hand. Wearing that familiar watch on her wrist, the photo was captioned with just one sentence: "You will always be my sense of belonging." I froze. I told myself to be numb, to be indifferent, but when I saw that photo, my hand still gripped the phone tightly, my knuckles white, and I was shaking with anger. Huang Mengyao was deliberately provoking me, trying to force me to give in first. She always did this. As long as I gave in first, she would gain control of this relationship. When I got home that night, she didn't turn on the lights and sat alone on the sofa with a cold look in her eyes. I yawned and asked, "Are you still awake?" She whispered, "I'm hungry." I replied calmly, "Oh, then you can order takeout." She sneered and reminded me, "Didn't you say before that takeout is dirty? That the kitchens are a mess and that eating too much is bad for your health?" I didn't even look up. "I'm tired." After a few words, silence filled the air. Memories came rushing back like knives. When we first got together, we used to talk about everything, holding each other all night long. She would share with me the fun things that happened every day and would excitedly plan for the future in the middle of the night, saying that when she saved enough money, she would buy a house in this city and then get married. She used to be so passionate, and she used to shout until she was hoarse in bed at night. But all of this had long since vanished. From the initial enthusiasm to the gradual perfunctory attitude to her resistance, it finally became a week, 2 weeks, without even a word of concern. I suddenly realized that her novelty had long passed. I am tired, both physically and mentally. But every day after get off work, I am still used to taking care of her, buying groceries and cooking and accompanying her. It is like an instinct engraved in my bones and blood. But she suddenly spoke coldly, asking me if I'd become so cold because of the kiss between her and Zhao Yuanji that night. She mentioned the lies she told that night, saying she was staying at her best friend's house. She pretended to be frightened, saying I had become a stranger. But she didn't dare mention anything about what had happened today. She felt guilty, but I simply lit a cigarette and took a deep drag. I told her, isn't this what she wants? A carefree, free life. But as soon as I said that, the air became eerily quiet and her face changed. At that moment, she finally realized something. She panicked and immediately changed the subject, saying she had bought a new set of underwear specifically for me. But I only left 2 cold words: "I'm tired." I slammed the door and entered the spare room, originally a guest room reserved for my parents' friends. Over the years, whenever we'd have a Cold War, she'd sleep in the master bedroom, and I'd move in here. It was an all too familiar scene, a ridiculous cycle. I knew full well that she was probably in the living room right now, holding her phone, pouring out her grievances to Zhao Yuanji. Every time they argued, she was used to relying on that man for comfort. But I didn't care anymore. I even felt a sense of relief I'd never felt before. Love can make you go through life and death, or chill you to the bone. Once it's gone, it never comes back. 3 days of cold silence became our daily routine. She remained silent, and I didn't bother explaining anything. Then, on the 4th night, she suddenly called, pleading with me to come home from get off work. She said she wanted to give me a surprise. I was stunned, not because of anticipation, but because I suddenly realized that she might have secretly come to the company and seen me ordering takeout, so she missed the cafeteria. She started to care about my situation, but it was too late. My love had run out, and there wasn't a drop left. I knew in my heart that I no longer loved her. The funny thing is that he obviously still cared about her and obviously couldn't bear to leave her, but when he decided to leave, he did it as easily as throwing away a piece of waste paper. I pushed open the door and saw her wearing an apron. The table was filled with homemade dishes, and even the dusty table was polished to a shine. Wine glasses and bottles were neatly arranged. But when I glanced around, I saw her best friend Wang Qiong and Zhao Yuanji. My heart sank instantly. They were actually there. Zhao Yuanji stood up and confessed what happened that night, saying that he had drunk too much and impulsively took her to his place and took photos. He even offered her a cigarette. I didn't reach out. My eyes fell on Wang Qiong. This woman never took me seriously. She always sided with Zhao Yuanji and covered for them. How many times have they made fun of me behind my back? The things I know and don't know combined are too numerous to count. Wang Xiong also laughed and said that men should be more generous and turn a blind eye. I finally understood that this was a scene carefully prepared by Huang Mingyao. It wasn't for the purpose of reconciliation or apology, but to call them over to help her force me to compromise and persuade me. I spread my hands, looked at their surprised eyes, and said in a tone that couldn't be any calmer, "I'm really not angry." This time it was true. But at that moment, Huang Mingyao panicked. For the first time, her face, which I knew so well, was filled with guilt and fear. She didn't even dare to look me in the eye. I didn't say anything else. I just turned my head slightly and looked at Zhao Yuanji. My eyes were as calm as if I was chatting about the weather. Does she still snore when she sleeps like before? The air was completely frozen, and the entire living room was as quiet as death. The expressions on their faces were frozen, as if they had just been struck by lightning. Before Zhao Yuanji and Wang Qiong came, they probably anticipated countless possible reactions from me, but they didn't expect that I would use such a dismissive attitude and catch them off guard. I didn't intend to argue, nor did I want to cry, and I didn't want to act out any melancholy. I just picked up my chopsticks and ate my meal. "Mengyao, you can cook?" Zhao Yunji raised an eyebrow and looked at me with disdain. "She always does it." "Why? She never did it for you." At that moment, the sense of superiority in his eyes was like a nail piercing my heart. I knew that I had lost again, completely. From the day I pursued Huang Mingyao, I gave her everything she wanted, even snatching away every opportunity to show off herself. If she really wanted to cook, I would have taken over the kitchen long ago. But now I don't love you anymore, I lost, so what? I don't even bother to pretend that I care. We're just friends. Zhao Yuanji argued coldly, with a warning in his words. I nodded. Friends. The kind you can sleep in the same bed with. They're pretty special. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly rushed over and punched me in the face without any warning. I was stunned for a second, then I threw him with my backhand, and we wrestled on the ground. The living room instantly turned into a battlefield. Although he was strong, his strength was weaker than I imagined. He was the first man who dared to attack me in front of Meng Yao, and he was also the first loser I beat to the ground. Huang Mingyao screamed and rushed over, pulling us apart. She stood in front of Zhao Yuan and yelled at me. "Su Yuan, are you crazy?" The next second, she turned her head and said tenderly, "Yuanji, are you okay? Are you hurt anywhere?" I stood there, blood flowing from the corner of my mouth and nose, motionless, listening to her soft voice as she used a tissue to wipe his face, as if she was protecting the most important person in the world. I suddenly realized that I was the redundant person, the clown who destroyed their happy picture. The air froze, and I fell silent. A kind of peace that I had never experienced in 7 years of love suddenly came over my heart. Zhao Yuanji and Wang Qiong left, leaving the floor in a mess and my face still bleeding from the nose. Huang Mingyao sat opposite me and was silent for a long time. Finally, she remembered that I was also injured and reached out to get a tissue. I turned my head away and avoided her hand. Her face froze and her tone turned cold. "Su Yuan, there's really something wrong with you." I chuckled. Hasn't the problem between us been there for a long time? She was stunned, her eyes were complicated, and she finally lowered her head and said, "You don't know how much I have endured for you. I care about you too much. But people are made of flesh and blood. I get tired, sad, and disappointed too." I didn't interrupt her, but just slowly chewed over the emotional accusations that I was familiar with. Then I spoke, my voice so soft it sounded like I was saying goodbye. "Let's break up." She was stunned. Her eyes went blank for a moment, and her breathing became disordered. I looked at her with a smile, calmly as if I was talking about a very ordinary little thing. We just stared at each other, her eyes first showing disbelief, then panic, and finally despair. She stood up suddenly, her voice trembling. "Su Yuan, let's get married. Today is your birthday." Huang Mingyao tried to force a smile and pretend that nothing had happened, as if she had just misheard what I said. "Let's break up." She pulled out a cake from under the table, which I hadn't noticed. I was so focused on fighting with Zhao Yuanji that I didn't even notice this surprise hidden under the table. "You come and cut it. It's your 29th birthday." I told the cake shop to put only 18-year-old candles. Men are always 18. I didn't respond. She arranged the cakes by herself, then took out a small box mysteriously. Ding, ding, ding. Guess what this is? She opened the box, revealing 2 wedding rings gleaming silver. I've been preparing for this for a long time. I'm going to propose to you on your birthday. I love you. Let's get married. I remained expressionless and didn't say a word. I know I was too willful and always ignored you before. But you've been so good to me, I can't live without you. You don't allow me to drink, so I'll quit. You don't like me contacting Zhao Yuanji, so I'll delete all his contact information immediately. Su Yuan, I will really change. Please marry me, okay? I remained silent. Her voice began to tremble, and her eyes turned red. I'm sorry. I really didn't mean to protect Zhao Yuanji with that slap, just now. I didn't care about your feelings. I was wrong. Don't scare me. I'm really scared when you do this. I really can't leave you. She squatted in front of me crying and put the ring on my hand tremblingly. Her tears fell on the back of my hand, wet and hot. I gently shook her hand away. The blow was very light, but it was like a thunderbolt hitting her heart. She fell to the ground and cried until her voice broke. I helped her up and wiped the tears from her face. Mingyao, let's break up. I'm really tired, very tired. Don't want. She suddenly broke down and screamed at the top of her lungs. Why? You could be together if you want, and break up if you want. Who am I? She rushed over and hugged me tightly. Like a piece of driftwood, her fingers dug into my back, and I didn't struggle. I just stood there, letting her hold me, and whispered, as adults, you need to be able to take on responsibilities and let go. A decent farewell is also a kind of romance. She suddenly laughed, a bitter and broken laugh. You make it sound so easy, but what should I do? I was wrong, Su Yuan. I really know I was wrong. I swear, nothing happened between Zhao Yuanji and me that night. Please don't leave, okay? She cried until her voice was hoarse and her emotions completely broke down. And just now, he was the one who hit you first. I didn't expect a fight to happen. It turned out that she saw it too. I said calmly, whether it happened or not is no longer important, Mingyao. Have you noticed that I haven't contacted you since half a year ago? I didn't call you in the middle of the night, and I no longer advise you not to meet Zhao Yuanji. I'm letting you go, you know? Little by little, slowly, I'm peeling you from my heart. I broke free from her embrace and walked into the bedroom. I started packing my luggage. Actually, there was nothing much to pack. It seemed like this house had never really belonged to me from the beginning to the end. There are not many clothes, and the daily necessities are just the most basic ones. Where's the affection? Where's the status? Where's the sense of existence? None of that. The suitcase was half full, but there was still a lot of empty space. Huang Mingyao's heart-wrenching cries suddenly rang out in the living room, and she completely collapsed. I didn't look back. I only heard her hysterical scream exploding behind me. Su Yuan, you bastard. I had been planning to break up for a long time, so I booked a house in advance and had reached an agreement with the landlord. He was just waiting for me to transfer the money and move in. Huang Mingyao suddenly rushed out, opened her arms, and blocked the door. Her voice choked and uncharacteristic of her. Su Yuan, please don't leave. I'm afraid of the dark, afraid of being alone, afraid of not having you. As she said this, her whole body was shaking violently. I looked at her and said calmly, don't we still have Zhao Yuanji? Didn't you say that when you were most lonely and in the most difficult times, he was the one who accompanied you? Huang Mingyao, it's time for us to end this. I woke up from my dream half a year ago. This time, I left completely, even with an unprecedented sense of ease. I moved into the new rental house. That whole night, I didn't lose sleep, didn't look back, and I didn't think about her. Some people say that the first 2 weeks after a breakup are a numb period, and the emotional recoil will be delayed. I don't know what that pain feels like, but I know that I will never be soft-hearted for her again. But she didn't let me go. The next day, the third day, the fourth day, she showed up downstairs in my company on time every day, her eyes swollen like walnuts from crying, making the whole company excited. My boss called me in for a talk 3 times, and my colleagues kept talking about me behind my back. She disregarded her image and the cost, and almost knelt down in the street to beg me to go back. On the 5th day, I resigned. I didn't even clean up my desk, and the personnel signature procedures were handled by a friend. I want to disappear from her world, cleanly and completely. We don't have many mutual friends, and I haven't exchanged a few words with Zhao Yuanji and Wang Xiong on WeChat in years, so it's not a pity to delete them. I blocked them, and from that day on, I had nothing to do with Huang Mingyao. In this journey of life, she is just a passenger who got on the bus halfway. No one owes anyone anything, and no one needs to wait for anyone. We each go our own way. Only by being more relaxed can you let go completely During the time I was unemployed, I went out early and came back late every day, sent out resumes frantically, ate instant noodles to cope with the pressure, and was so busy that I almost collapsed. But this kind of busyness is really nothing compared to the emotional entanglement with her in the past. As someone said, if I have the ability to love you, I also have the ability to get rid of you. On the 10th day, I dragged my tired body back to the rental house. As soon as I turned the corner of the flower bed downstairs, I saw her sitting there, with empty bottles all over the floor and a box of unopened beer piled at her feet. She is drunk. The moment she saw me, Huang Mingyao's eyes lit up. Suyuan. She staggered to her feet, ran towards me, and wanted to hug me. I dodged to the side, and she missed and fell heavily to the ground. But she didn't stop. She got up and tried to hug me again. I shouted, "Are you childish? Huang Mingyao, you are an adult. You are that arrogant woman with an overflowing self-esteem. Do you know what you look like now?" The picture is reversed. I suddenly remembered that I once knelt down in front of her to beg for peace, and even wanted to jump off the windowsill to prove that I loved her. At that moment, I finally understood what collapse of dignity meant. Huang Mingyao completely collapsed. She was like a lost child, crying on the street, and passers-by all stopped to watch. She cried hoarsely, "Suyuan, I really know I was wrong. I was too selfish. I hurt you. After you left, I couldn't sleep every night. I really went crazy. Let's make peace. You've already driven me to hell. I can't handle it anymore. This joke is too big. It's really too big." I stood there, watching her crying coldly, my heart remaining calm. I asked, "Who taught you that?" She was stunned, tears still hanging on her eyelashes, and looked at me blankly. "This is not something I can fake through acting. No one taught me. These are my true feelings," she said, crying. "Why don't you even give me a chance? I'm willing to change. I really am. If you mind Zhao Yuanji, I will delete all his contact information right now, and I will delete it in front of you." She cried until her throat was sore. But I am no longer the Su Yuan who would feel soft-hearted when hearing her cry. "Who taught you to drink downstairs from me? And how did you know where I live?" I finally spoke, looking at her tearful face. My tone was cold and without any warmth. There was a time when I wanted to stick with her 24 hours a day, but now I want to disappear from her world. Huang Mingyao sobbed and wiped her tears, her voice trembling. "I went to your company to look for you, and your colleagues said you resigned. He said you mentioned wanting to move here before, so I guess you'll be living here. Drinking, Zhao Yuanji taught me." My eyes instantly turned cold. It was Zhao Yuanji again, the man I always envied, hiding between me and Huang Mingyao like a shadow. In the past, whenever she had a breakdown and felt lonely, it was him who drank with her, not me. He is handsome, with clear eyes, like a naturally lovable little deer, and is the envy of everyone in college. I will always remember that the year he appeared in our lives was the 3rd year after Huang Mingyao and I had been in love for 2 years. She excitedly told me, "Guess who contacted me?" I cooperated with a smile, but I didn't know that from that moment on, I had lost. Now, looking at this woman who was breaking down in tears, I suddenly said, "Huang Mingyao, we are adults. The most basic thing is to learn to love ourselves first. You taught me this sentence. Look at what you've become now. Where did that dazzling classmate, Huang, go?" I grabbed her shoulders, my voice low but filled with anger. She lowered her head and cried, not daring to look at me. I shook her desperately, trying to wake up the once proud her. There were more and more people around me, and the sound of pointing and talking fell into my ears. Who cares about the truth? Seeing her cry like this makes me feel like a heartless person. I didn't say anything else, shook her off, and walked into the corridor without looking back. She shouted from behind, "Su Yuan, I won't give up." She didn't leave that night. She was in her wedding dress, sitting in her car drinking beer all night. The next morning, the community group exploded. "That guy is so cruel. The girl is wearing a wedding dress and begging for reconciliation." I became famous and became the hotly discussed male protagonist in the entire community. On the 9th day, I moved. I moved to a smaller and cheaper house, but still couldn't escape her obsession. She actually rented the house opposite mine and became my nominal neighbor. She knew that I was looking for a job and was under a lot of financial pressure, so she would buy groceries and cook every evening and sit at the door waiting for me. I haven't found a job yet, and I'm exhausted from running around all day. When I saw her squatting at the entrance of the corridor, I couldn't describe how I felt. "Su Yuan, you're back." She smiled and stood up, her tone cautious. "I have heated up the food, and I have everything you like. Tomato, scrambled eggs, garlic, chrysanthemum, and bacon, preserved vegetable braised pork, pork ribs stewed with peanuts, and your favorite bitter melon. I was stunned and didn't say anything. At that moment, I remembered how I used to prepare hot water for her to soak her feet late at night. Add water when it's cold, pour it out when it's full. We have all worked so hard. Only now, the roles are reversed. I whispered, I never liked bitter melon. She was stunned, but you eat it every time. I looked at her, my tone calm but cold. I eat bitter melon because you like it. Not because I love it, but because I love you. Every time I endure the bitter taste and swallow the whole bitter melon, just because you say it is nutritious. Do you know? But you never saw it, because when we were eating, you were looking at your phone and chatting with Zhao Yuanji. Her face turned pale in an instant. His eyes were filled with regret, heartache, and unprecedented guilt. She stood outside the door, trembling all over, like a paper figure that would fall down at the slightest gust of wind. After a long time, she said in a hoarse voice, Su Yuan, what on earth did I do before? I waved my hands gently, trying to remain calm. I've eaten. You can eat now. After saying that, I walked into the house without looking back, not giving her any chance, nor daring to leave any way out for myself. I am afraid that if I become soft-hearted, I will fall into the same abyss. She said she would change for me, but if I really believed her, what would happen in the next few decades? If I had to do it again, I would go crazy. For love, people will go crazy. At that moment, I no longer believed that she had changed. But soon after I sat down, she knocked on the door again. I looked through the peephole and was completely stunned. She was holding a fruit knife in her hand, cutting her wrist little by little. I rushed out and decisively grabbed the knife. Before I could scold her, she suddenly hugged me, kissed me madly, and then pulled open my clothes. That's enough. I roared angrily. This time, I was really angry. I pushed her away without hesitation, and she fell directly to the floor with her clothes in disarray. She had lost interest in me since our 3rd year together. In that kind of thing, I was basically the one who took the initiative and ended it hastily with her perfunctory response. I have long been traumatized by her cold expression. Later on, I would rather use the excuse of going to the bathroom in the middle of the night to relieve myself than face her disgusted tone. But what about now? 5 years have passed, and the first time she took the initiative was after they broke up. I didn't help her, but stood there, staring at her coldly. Do you think you were still a child? She sat on the ground, hugged her knees, and choked with sobs. Su Yuan, only when I stood in your position and poured my heart out for someone did I understand. It's really hard, so hard. I only lasted a month, but you lasted 5 years. I closed my eyes, and sure enough, she knew everything. She knew when I stopped taking the initiative, and she also knew that her heart had begun to drift away from me since the year Zhao Yuanji appeared. Can we have a good chat? I promise this is just one chat. After that, I won't bother you again. I hesitated for a moment and nodded. We sat on the sofa, and she actually took a cigarette from my cigarette box and lit it skillfully, like an old smoker who had smoked all his life. When did you learn to smoke? She took a puff and said calmly, The night we broke up, I went to the store and bought a whole pack. You always said I was a quick learner, didn't you? Back then, you were the most popular person in the school, the student council president with good grades, good looks, and dimples. I sat right in front of you. At first, I just came to you to ask questions, but you always patiently answered them. Gradually, I found that I began to like you. Not the kind of girlish liking, but the kind of admiration that comes from the soul. You were sunny and enthusiastic, chatting and laughing with everyone, while I am just an invisible person who is ignored. But one day, I suddenly realized that the way you looked at me was different. I saw myself in your eyes. As she spoke, I couldn't help but smile, and memories came flooding back. That year on campus, we were in the classroom, the cafeteria, the library, and the tree-lined paths. There were so many places where we laughed together. Huang Mingyao continued. I was unwilling to give up. When Zhao Yuanji reappeared in front of me, my heart was shaken. I took advantage of your love for me, acted willfully and recklessly, and squandered your kindness to me, because I knew you wouldn't leave. But when you really left, I realized that I was nothing. I love you to the bone. I looked at her and smiled calmly. Me too. Even now, I will never fall in love with another woman in my life. But that's why you shouldn't just get along with anyone. That would be so unfair to the person I might marry in the future. Remember, I said before, you have stars in your eyes. I paused and slowly said the last sentence. But now it's gone. I can't find it anymore. I stood up, opened the door, and made way. Mingyao. I called my dad today, and he asked me when I would bring my girlfriend home. Her eyes lit up, and she couldn't wait to speak. Now, let's go now. I shook my head and smiled tiredly. Don't you always dislike meeting elders? At first, they said we were moving too fast. Then they said we weren't stable. And finally, they called me childish and said I was too clingy. But now you suddenly want to see my dad? I told him we broke up. He was speechless, so I continued, Dad, I'm really tired. He was silent for a long time before he spoke and said, Come back and rest if you're tired. The door to my home is always open to me. I don't want to say any more. Huang Mingyao suddenly turned around, gently hugged my neck, tears in her eyes. She stood on tiptoe, her voice trembling. My favorite boy. Let me kiss you once, okay? She came over and kissed me. I didn't hide or respond. I just stood there and let her lips fall on my face. At that moment, what we exchanged was not a kiss, but a silent farewell. She was crying, and the moment the door closed, I squatted on the ground and cried inconsolably. I once said that people's hearts are made of flesh and blood, and they can also become completely cold. I felt soft-hearted, but I also understood that I shouldn't give her another chance, nor should I give myself another chance. Didn't sleep all night. I booked a ticket for the earliest train at 8 o'clock. I checked out of the room, turned off my phone, and quietly left with my suitcase. I was afraid that she would block me again. I didn't want to hear her cry again, and I didn't want to be shaken again. I may never come back to this city. Too many emotions were completely swallowed up by this familiar building. When I arrived at the train station, I was stunned as the taxi stopped. Huang Mingyao stood at the exit, motionless. She didn't cry or make a fuss. She just stood there like a statue with a lost soul. I looked into her eyes, and she looked into mine. She didn't go home last night and has been waiting for me here. She knew I would definitely leave, so she stayed up all night just to block my last retreat. I don't know what time you'll leave, but I know you'll leave. If you leave, we will never see each other again in this life. Su Yuan, are you really so decisive? I nodded and said nothing. Then I'll take you there. She snatched the luggage from my hand, and we walked into the waiting room in silence. I didn't refuse, and she didn't explain any further. We sat there, silent like a pair of strangers who had just had an argument. The train announcement sounded, and she carried my luggage and walked with me step by step to the platform. She paused and spoke slowly. We walked back to back for dozens of steps. On the 10th step, you can get on the bus. If you look back or don't go up, we'll get back together. We're leaving this city, leaving behind everyone in the past, and starting over. I'm willing to spend the rest of my life mending your broken heart. Her voice began to tremble and her body swayed slightly, but she tried to remain calm. I stared at her. Are you so sure that I will come back? She nodded and said firmly, Because I am the woman you have loved most in your life. We turned around. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. Step 9, step 10. I didn't stop. I boarded the train. Standing in the carriage, I looked through the window and saw that she was still counting. When she turned around, I was gone. 20 steps is not a far distance, but it feels like there is a whole mountain and sea between us. The one I love is separated by mountains and seas cannot be leveled. Huang Mingyao covered her mouth, tears bursting out, and she couldn't stop them. The train started moving. She began to run, first walking, then trotting, and finally stumbling after the train. She put her hand on the car window, leaving a palm print on it. That mark is like her last trace in my life. The train accelerated. She couldn't catch up, so she fell, got up, and fell again, until her figure was left in the distance and disappeared completely. I looked at the palm print, which was like the last sigh she left for me in the mist. Goodbye, Huang Mingyao, the girl I once loved with my life. But my heart has long been broken and can never be put back together again. Would be Su Juan, that silly boy who was willing to jump out of the window for her. We each run towards the darkness without light. I hope that many years later, we still have the ability to love others.